I had never truly understood silence until the first night of quarantine. It wasn't the absence of sound, but rather the eerie presence of it. The type of silence that makes your ears ring with the weight of what should be heard. Distant cars, footsteps upstairs, a television murmuring through the walls. But this place, nothing, just the rhythmic, mechanical hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I arrived at the government-run isolation centre after testing positive at the airport. They said it was standard procedure for travellers. 3 days, they assured me. Just a precaution. The building was a repurposed sanatorium from the 1950s, tucked in a remote forest outside the city. From the moment the heavy iron doors locked behind me, I felt like a patient, not a guest. My room was small and stark. Peeling white walls, a single metal-framed bed, a barred window, and an old intercom that crackled every now and then, though no one ever spoke. No phone, no internet, just me and a stack of outdated magazines. I told myself it was fine, it would be over soon. That first night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m, I heard scratching, not the kind of scratching that comes from mice in the walls. This was slow, deliberate, and right at the door. I sat up, holding my breath. It went on for almost a minute, then silence. I waited, expecting someone to speak through the intercom, maybe a nurse making rounds. Nothing. I opened the door a crack. The hallway was empty, lit by a dim orange emergency bulb. The scratching had stopped. The next morning, I asked the man who brought my breakfast, an older worker in a hazmat suit, if there were animals in the building. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head and said, "You should keep your door locked at night." That was it. No explanation. His tone wasn't concerned, it was warning. On the second day, things began to shift. Subtly at first. My utensils were replaced with plastic ones, even though they had given me metal cutlery the day before. The lights flickered constantly now. Worse, the intercom started whispering. Not voices, whispers. Low, unintelligible murmurs that drifted in and out. I pressed the call button. No response. I tried to ignore it, pacing the room like a prisoner. The magazines were about fashion from over a decade ago. I began tearing the pages into pieces just to do something. That night, the scratching returned, but this time it moved. From the door to the window, then beneath the bed. I froze. I didn't dare move. I could feel something breathing in the room, shallow and raspy. But I saw nothing. The air felt colder, heavier. I kept my eyes shut until morning. Day 3. I woke up with blood under my fingernails. I don't bite them. I don't scratch myself in my sleep. I checked my body. No wounds. The bedsheets had been turned over, tucked in military tight. Someone had been in the room. I demanded answers from the next hazmat-suited worker. He only said, "It's your last day. Stay calm." That night was the longest of my life. Around midnight, the lights cut out completely. I was left in total darkness. Then I heard it. Whispers, this time clear. My name, repeated over and over in different voices. Male, female, child. Some calm, some angry, some desperate. I backed into a corner, heart slamming against my ribs. The intercom crackled violently, and suddenly a voice shrieked, "Stay with us!" The door burst open at dawn. 2 men in full gear rushed in, grabbed me and pulled me out. I didn't resist. I couldn't. I was shaking uncontrollably, my voice barely a whisper. Outside, the sun was shining, birds were chirping. The world was normal again. They didn't let me take anything, not even my clothes. I was hosed down, handed a set of new clothes, and told I was free to go. "Did you hear the voices?" I asked one of them. He paused, then leaned closer and said, "It's not the virus that keeps people there. It's what's left from before. That place was never meant to be reopened." Then he walked away. I looked back at the building one last time. For a split second, I thought I saw someone watching me from the barred window of my old room. But when I blinked, it was gone. Back in my apartment, I tried to return to normal life. I told myself it was over, just a bad experience, intensified by stress and isolation. But something was different. The silence followed me. My home didn't sound the same anymore. No creaks from the radiator, no humming from the fridge. Just stillness. I began leaving the TV on at night just to hear a voice. 3 days after returning, I found a folded note under my pillow. I hadn't seen it before. It read, "We remember you. You belong with us now." It was written in my own handwriting. I ran to the door to leave, to get help, to find someone, anyone. But my door wouldn't open. It wasn't locked. It just wouldn't budge. I slammed it, screamed, pounded until my fists ached. No answer, not even from my neighbors. The world outside my window looked real, but I couldn't hear it anymore. The whispers returned that night, but not through any device. They came from inside the walls. They knew my name, my thoughts, my memories. I heard my mother's voice, though she passed away years ago. Then the voice of the man in the hazmat suit, repeating, "It never ends. It only spreads." On the bathroom mirror, written in fog, though I hadn't used hot water, were the words, "You never left." My reflection smiled even when I didn't. I stumbled back in terror, feeling the cold breath of something right behind me. But when I turned, there was only the mirror again, and my smiling reflection, still smiling. I don't know how long I've been here now. The days blur. I try to write it down, but the pages keep vanishing. Sometimes I hear someone knocking at the door, but I've learned not to answer. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of grey-skied day where time seemed to stick. Michael Klein, a 48-year-old former paramedic living alone in his modest Chicago apartment, had been furloughed since the quarantine began. With the city under strict lockdown, each day had blurred into the next until something broke the pattern. At around 2:13 p.m, he heard it, a dragging sound, slow, heavy, coming from the apartment directly above his. He froze mid-sip of his lukewarm coffee. That apartment had been empty for weeks, he was sure of it. The last tenants, a young couple, had fled the city in the early days of the outbreak. Michael had seen them leave, their car crammed with boxes and fear. At first, he told himself it was probably the building settling, or maybe even a raccoon, anything logical. But the next day, the noise came again. Only this time, it was followed by a knock, a slow, deliberate knock. Not on his door, but above it, as if someone was knocking on the floor of the apartment above. Michael stood in the hallway for a full minute, staring at the ceiling. Then, against better judgment, he climbed the stairs. The corridor on the third floor was silent. Apartment 3B's door had a dusty eviction notice still taped to it. He knocked. No answer. He listened. Nothing. But as he turned to leave, he swore he heard something shift inside, something soft dragging along the wood. That night, Michael didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m. his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "He's not gone. Don't open your door." His stomach dropped. He read the message 3 times, then peered through his peephole. The hallway was empty, but he waited, breath held, because something felt wrong. After 5 minutes, a shape moved just beyond the fisheye lens. Too tall, too slow. A figure gliding, not walking. Michael backed away. Michael tried to report it to the building manager the next morning, but no one answered. The office was closed indefinitely. He called the non-emergency police line. They told him to stay indoors and avoid unnecessary contact. That was the protocol now. Desperate, he taped a note to 3B's door. "If you're inside, please let me know you're okay." It was gone by evening. Out of boredom or paranoia, Michael joined a late-night video call with old co-workers. As they joked and drank, Michael mentioned the noises. One of them, a nurse named April, went quiet. Then she whispered, "What apartment do you live in again?" When he told her, her face went pale. "I used to treat a guy in 3B, lived alone, paranoid schizophrenic. Said he heard voices in the walls, disappeared a month ago. No one ever found him." By Friday, Michael had gone days without real sleep. The dragging was nightly now. Sometimes it was paired with whispers that seemed to echo from the vents. He tried to convince himself it was stress, but then he found the basement door ajar. It was always locked, but not that night. He stood there, flashlight in hand, trying to decide whether to go down. Something in him, some old emergency response instinct, kicked in. He descended. The basement smelled of mildew and rust. His light flickered against the concrete walls as he moved deeper. That's when he saw it. Drag marks, deep grooves in the dust, like something heavy had been pulled across the floor. And at the far end, apartment 3B's discarded furniture, broken pieces, bloodstains, a mattress slashed open, then breathing, not his, just behind him. Michael spun, flashlight trembling, but there was nothing. Only a section of wall that looked newer, cleaner. He knocked, hollow. Panicked now, he pulled at the edges. The plaster gave way, revealing a crawl space, and in it, a nest of blankets, rotten food, and a figure hunched and unmoving, pale, eyes open, staring. The man had been living in the walls. The police came. They removed the body, said he had died days ago, possibly even a week. Starvation. No explanation for how Michael had seen movement or why the dragging had continued. Michael moved out the next morning, but that night in his new apartment, as he lay in bed, he heard it again, dragging just above. It was March 2020 when the world started shutting down. For Alan Morris, a 48-year-old freelance graphic designer living in a modest 3-story apartment complex in New Jersey, the lockdown felt more like a pause than a threat. He stocked up on canned goods, updated his Netflix list, and assumed the worst he'd face was boredom. But by the 3rd week, it wasn't the news headlines or empty streets that unnerved him. It was the sound, or rather the lack of it, from the apartment above. The tenant upstairs, Ms. Calloway, was an elderly woman known for playing classical music softly in the evenings. Chopin mostly, but now there was nothing. No creaking footsteps, no music, not even the usual sound of her dragging furniture when she couldn't sleep. Alan tried not to worry. People kept to themselves, especially now. Still, after 4 days of silence, he found himself knocking at her door with a cloth mask pulled tight over his nose. There was no answer. Alan pressed his ear against the door and held his breath. Nothing. He called the landlord, who sounded agitated. "I'm not going over there," he said. "She probably left town. Just let it be. It's quarantine, man." But something didn't sit right. That night, as Alan lay in bed, he swore he heard something above him. Not footsteps, but a slow, deliberate dragging sound. It stopped suddenly, and then came 3 soft knocks. Not at his door, on the ceiling. He sat up, blinking into the dark, heart pounding. Was someone trying to get his attention from upstairs? The next morning, he called the police. They came, knocked, then left after 5 minutes. "No signs of forced entry. We can't just break in," they said. Alan asked if they heard anything. The officer gave him a strange look. "Heard what?" "Place is dead quiet." That night, Alan climbed the back fire escape to Ms. Calloway's window. It was slightly ajar. He called her name and listened. Then he heard something that stopped his breath. The faint sound of classical music. Chopin. It was playing in slow, distorted loops, like a warped vinyl left spinning. He shuddered. With a hesitant push, he opened the window and climbed in. The apartment was cold. It smelled faintly of old wood and something sour. The furniture was untouched, neatly arranged. A record player spun in the corner, but the needle was skipping back and forth over a scratch, creating a haunting echo of piano notes. On the dining table sat a plate of untouched food, now rotting. Alan crept down the hallway. The bedroom door was slightly open. He nudged it. What he saw froze him in place. Ms. Calloway sat upright in her rocking chair, eyes wide, unmoving. Her mouth hung open as if caught mid-scream, but she wasn't breathing. A deep, unnatural groan rose from the shadows of the room. Alan turned to run, but the bedroom door slammed shut behind him. By morning, he was back in his own apartment. He couldn't remember how he got there. His shoes were muddy, his palms scraped. On his kitchen table was a leather-bound journal that wasn't his. The name inside read, Eleanor Calloway. He stared at it, throat dry. The pages were filled with handwritten entries about her hearing voices in the walls, about something watching her. The last entry read, "It only moves when you don't look. It knows the world has stopped. Now it can feed." Alan tried to burn the journal. It wouldn't catch fire. He dumped it in the trash outside, only to find it back on his kitchen counter the next morning. That night, the ceiling above him creaked again, but heavier this time, like something dragging itself closer. Days blurred. He stopped calling people. No one answered. When he looked outside, he saw no movement, not even in the other buildings. It was as if the world had frozen around his apartment complex. He tried to leave, but every exit led him back to the front door. GPS stopped working. The clocks blinked 3:15 a.m. permanently. On the 6th night, he opened Ms. Calloway's journal again. A new line had appeared, written in his handwriting. "You look too long." A low breath whispered in his ear. He turned around. No one. But the air was heavier, charged, and the hallway lights flickered as something unseen moved past them. Alan set up cameras around his apartment. Every night they picked up subtle changes. Chairs slightly moved, objects rotated. In one frame, for a single second, there was a figure in the corner. Tall, pale, eyeless. Alan screamed when he saw it. The same moment, all the lights in his apartment went out. Now he stays in one room, surrounded by mirrors. He won't look directly at the ceiling anymore. He won't listen to music. He barely eats. The city has resumed life outside, but no one comes for him. No one remembers him. He checks the news. His building isn't listed anymore. It's like it vanished.